Hello and welcome to the Bread Slice Christian Podcast, where we have real conversations with real people about having Jesus in everyday life. I am your host, Alex, and today I'm really happy to have in the studio here, Tom Plaman. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you. Please, for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you, Tom?
All right. Well, I grew up in Appleton, so I'm a lifelong resident. I actually grew up on the north side of town, close to St. Peter, out by Plaman Park, thus my name. And I was a little different, I would say, as a kid. I questioned everything. I was probably one of those little kids that always said, "Why, Dad? Why?" And then they give you an answer and you go, "Why again?" But I loved life. I loved being adventurous. And I guess I went through the same thing everybody does. I thought I knew a lot when I was young. And then now that I've grown older, I'm getting close to 70, that whole idea has kind of flip-flopped, whereas I probably know a lot more now, but also realize there's a whole lot of things I don't know. So versus when I was a kid, I thought I knew everything, and really I didn't. So that's been a real interesting journey as I've grown older. And I embrace that and always realize that there's so much more to learn. And I think that's what motivates me to continually exploring things. So that's kind of my personality. And then as far as a career, I did mostly architectural work, architectural woodwork, architectural designing. I designed a lot of high-end luxury homes. And I did that up until about 14, 15 years ago. And I ran into Pastor Ski, who was looking at starting a new church in Appleton, which was the core. And I sat down with him, and we talked, and I found out that what he wanted to use is to embrace technology to enhance the word and the message and get it out to more people. And we were just getting into that world of everybody being connected on cell phones, basically, and then social media got into it. But initially, it was just the fact that everybody had access to the internet, and that was exciting for me. And I jumped right into that, and that's what got me going with the core. So I used a lot of the skills that I had in house design because I was really into software and doing visuals and images and 3D motion graphics, all that. So that I used those skills that I learned from that for the church, and I felt much more, it was much more rewarding to be using my skill set for the church than, let's say, a couple that had the money to be able to buy a house like that, but it really wasn't that fulfilling, other than it was kind of cool. But so that's my story. That led me up to here. I retired January 1st, and now I am just enjoying life, still digging into a lot of different things, took up art, and I'm doing a lot of watercolor painting. And today I'm sitting here with Alex.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that. It is amazing to get to know you a little bit better and a little bit of that window of who Tom is. Because like I said, I met you in the church, and, I've seen the stuff that you work on. And then, when we get started talking about science or AI, I think we have really good conversation. And it's really, really amazing to get in there and kind of, into the mind of Tom. So tell us a little bit about your journey in faith and all that.
Yeah, I have to say that it was a blessing to actually get transfer over to the church when I did back then, because up until then, I considered myself a Christian. I went to church a lot, but I didn't realize how, for the lack of a better word, I wasn't really involved. My church and Christianity involved that 1 hour on Sunday, and I thought that was being a Christian. Then I discovered getting involved with the core and that 922 ministry, the church was a lot more than that 1 hour on Sunday. And that's really when the idea of church family began to form in my life and my wife Pam's life, which is very interesting because up until then, I had no church friends. I went to church, but I had no friends outside of church that I did anything with. Now, I have no non-church friends. It's all church friends. So it's a really interesting how that 15 years transformed my social life, and church has become so much more than that 1 hour. I think church involves every day of the week now for us, whether it's being part of a group or activity at church. Very involved in the YouVersion Bible Plan. I do a lot of that, which keeps me connected with a lot of the church friends. And then Pam and I have taken up the little event that we do after church on Sundays, where we invite somebody from church up to our place, which we live right across the street from the core, for a little pizza and gathering. So that's also helped us get to know our church family a little bit better. So that's kind of how my church life has evolved since I became part of 922.
Yeah, like, would you share with us, like, what do you see besides, the social thing, and having, like you said, you have now more church friends, and then you don't have any non-church friends as compared to before. How does that, how is that affected, or not, let's say not affected, but changed your faith in a way, now that you're more involved with people as contrary to before, that you said you didn't have friends?
Sure. Well, I think the biggest thing is just the importance of faith and church, and how God becomes more part of your day than that 1 hour on Sunday. I mean, to be truthful, I probably checked out when I got in the car after church service on Sunday, and I didn't check in again until we got out of the car in the parking lot. So now, and it's really interesting, and I've mentioned this to other people, as you get more involved with God and His Word, everything starts to make more sense. And I tell especially non-believers, because for them it doesn't make sense. And then I have to be kind about it, but it doesn't make sense until you really dig into it. Right. And I equated that to, this was interesting, because I was listening to an app once, and it was the control tower at O'Hare International Airport. And if you listen to it, you can't understand a thing. It's just nonstop talk and numbers and all. And if you listen to it, it's like nothing makes sense. For those that have studied it and understand it, it all makes sense. So that would, for a non-believer, it would be like me going into a control tower and listening to it, and it doesn't make sense until I understand what it is they're talking about. You know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of a little analogy, but I've found that interesting. When I listen to the control tower, I kind of put that there.
Yeah.
But
that it might even sound like static to people. Like there's so much noise and so many things coming from many directions. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that analogy, especially because that's one of the reasons why I started going to this church, because Pastor Mike would break down Scripture in a way that made sense, in a way that's relatable.
Yes.
And that's what drew me closer. And I feel that us as believers, it's our job to make it, that simple, because at the end of the day, the message of the gospel is very simple.
Correct.
It's very simple.
Correct. So. I agree with that. And that was also the thing that I found going to 922 is how it relates to us today. Whereas in my past, I kind of equated a lot of the biblical stories as history stories. This happened long ago, when in fact these stories are really in the Bible to address our today's concerns. And it took that to connect that too. So, that's an interesting analogy, but yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And one of the things that, got me very curious and more open to other things is because, like you mentioned when you were little, I also kind of question things, probably not as deeply as you did, because I've always been kind of more open to like emotion and kind of driven by that. But then I started questioning when I got faced with the questions of, okay, well, is God really real? So when I took that group, when we were in that group that you were leading and talking about the creation and the science and everything behind it, it kind of opened up my mind to seeing God's work in everything.
Yes.
The little details, the more that you go into detail, something like as simple as a leaf, how does that even come to existence out of chance?
Correct.
That is one of the things that, I really enjoyed in the class and talking and discussing about it.
Yeah.
And then you do mention your passion for God's creation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And I think that passion has caused me to see God everywhere and every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so rewarding when you get to that point, because up until then, you see things that, well, that's cool, that's pretty, that's nice. And when you understand that it's something that he gave for us to enjoy, you really relish it, and you get a lot more out of it. And I kind of feel bad for the non-believers to go day to day and see all these things and not be able to connect a great God to it, and just say, oh, that happened by chance, whatever, great. So anyway, yeah, but you mentioned my passion for creation. That's something that I've really taken up probably in the last 10 years. I spend probably time every day digging into it. I think it's, and that's kind of where my curiosity helps me with, because I always want to know why and how. And I did go to a public junior high, and I remember we had science class, and they talked about evolution and all this stuff for me, and it just sounded, for me, kind of far-fetched, and I would raise my hand, question it, and I never had a good response. Normally, the response was, well, that's what's written in the book. That's what you're getting tested on, and it didn't satisfy me. So as I got older, and especially lately, and now that we have the internet and ChatGPT, I can really, really dig into it and find all sorts of fascinating things. And I don't know. I find that knowing everything was created from something, God, makes a lot more sense to me than what I was taught, where everything came from nothing. For me, that was just absurd. I couldn't, that didn't satisfy an answer for me. So that really spurred me on. I spend probably an hour or two every night after supper, and I have debated ChatGPT dozens of times, and it's kind of a fun thing. I would encourage other people to do that, because ChatGPT garners its information from everything, from the internet, from scientific papers, from scientists, universities, and I find it fascinating, and I try to back it into a corner, because it doesn't use its own logic. It uses information that it already has. So when you can get it to a point where it realizes what it told you isn't correct, it will actually apologize and kind of put that in its memory bank that this was not a correct answer. Yeah, so I don't know. It's just, it's a very interesting thing. I've learned that, evolution, it's taught as a science. I don't believe it is a science, because science is observable and repeatable. That was always what science was. Now they're kind of changing the description of science because it kind of doesn't fit their narrative.
Yeah.
But science needs facts to support it. Theories and stuff are not facts. And the problem I have with that is when it's presented in a classroom setting, it's never presented on, we believe that this may have happened like this. They don't present it like that. They present it, this is what happened. This is 32 billion years ago, this happened, and then this happened. It's never described as, and then this may have happened after that. Now, I could maybe accept that a little easier than, saying it as facts. So that's kind of how I approach ChatGPT then. I started out, they do the same thing as academia does. They say, this is what happened, this is how it happened, this is how it started. And then I start circling around and go, wait a minute, give me proof that, well, we don't necessarily have observable proof, but that we believe that this may have okay. And then I'll go, why didn't you answer it like that the first time? Why do you always have to wait until, so anyway.
Make it seem that there's no other way.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So,
I find that fascinating, that what you say that right there, especially when AI kind of apologizes and say, well, we actually don't know. It's kind of like I saw this video of they found this tissue from this extinct animal. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they said this tissue, it's almost impossible. We don't understand why this tissue is fresh. When we believe this animal was extinct like thousands, probably millions of years ago.
Sure.
So there's probably some certain a process or chemical, anything that is happening that we're not aware of. Instead of trying to change the way of looking at the thing and saying, you know what, we might be wrong about how we date things that are old.
Yep.
Instead of changing the way of thought, they're trying to fit it into that pre-established.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Critical thinking. They do not want to allow critical thinking. You buy into their agenda. And I've also, as I got into this, it's kind of clear cut what the agenda is. The agenda isn't to prove evolution happened. The agenda is to disprove or deny the existence of God. And that's what drives them. And so because you can uncover all sorts of things that they say that are not true. Matter of fact, recently, ChatGPT said something that I caught them on. I caught them in a lie, actually. And I had asked them a question to give me physical proof of the evolution of an eye. And here's the response. The 428 million year old Bercyphium fossil provides evidence of an early evolutionary transition from simple photosensitive areas to true multi-lens compound eyes. I looked at it and I go, that just sounds like a bunch of malarkey. So I Googled it. I threw it into Google.
Yeah.
Nope. Doesn't exist. That fossil does not exist. So I responded and I said, it didn't take me very long to find fault with your response. Point number 5, a Bercyphium does not exist. ChatGPT.
Yeah.
You are absolutely right. I made a mistake in citing the non-existent fossil.
Wow.
As evidence. Thank you for catching that. It will make me more careful about verifying fossil examples moving forward. Okay, now, the thing you need to remember is ChatGPT gets its information by scouring documents and talks from scientists and all that. So I went back trying to find where it got that source. It would not let me know because I was going to find out where the source was and then go at those, the college or wherever it came from. So I find it interesting. Then you start wondering how many other things are fabricated that are taught as, again, facts, which they aren't. So anyway, that's kind of my journey and playing with that. And I found so many different things. And I know you've experienced some of my ideas in that class. I do a creation science class, or it's kind of like a small group. And we talk about all sorts of topics like that, which are absolutely fascinating. But the more you dig into that, the more you find out that a lot of things aren't necessarily science. It makes you really appreciate your God more because he's really responsible for it all. But I look at things like, they talk about the formation of the solar system and the planets. And I caught something on that ChatGPT actually had not encountered before. And it even made a remark on that. Wow, that's something that I've not thought of in the past that we'll have to dig into that. And what it was is, okay, when the planets circle the sun, it's called the conservation of angular momentum. And I'm not going to get too much into the science, but basically what it is, it's the Earth in its mass, its weight, is going at the exact speed at the distance it is from the sun so that it doesn't fly out of orbit or that it doesn't crash into the sun. Right. So there's a perfect speed based on the mass and distance from the sun that it has to be in order to maintain an orbit. So then I ask, well, how did the planets form? Well, they formed from dust that was in the space dust and all that. And then it started a clump and then it got a little bigger. And, and I questioned that. That didn't seem very feasible. And I was like, well, how do they form a clump when there's no gravity? Well, static electricity would make the particles stick. And then I got a little further into it, and I said, okay, at a certain size, what size is it before it has its own gravity? Well, it would have to grow to a pretty good size before it would have its own gravity.
Mm-hmm.
I go, all right. So as it grows and grows and grows and gets to the size of Earth, what controlled the angular momentum, which means as the Earth got heavier, it would have to speed up or it would crash into the sun, or it would go out of orbit.
Mm-hmm.
So things, as mass changes, either the distance from the sun has to change or the speed of the Earth has to change to maintain that constant orbit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that change has to be happening all the time.
Yeah.
Because as it grows heavier, the parameters of the angular momentum need to change.
What's accelerating it?
Yeah. I said, without any, and of course, evolution, there is no intelligence. I go, without any intelligence, what's telling the Earth to speed up as it gets heavier? And it didn't have an answer for that. Mm-hmm. So then you got to throw this on top of it. The sun is moving over 500 million miles an hour through space. That's pretty fast. The planets are actually orbiting in a spiral. They don't actually go in a plane. They look like they're in a plane from a relative standpoint.
Yeah, because that's all the diagrams you see everywhere. Yeah.
But it's actually a helicoidal orbit, if you could see it in space. Now, you're going to remember the sun's moving at 500 million miles an hour, and they're trying to tell you that the Earth formed from some dust. Okay, how did that little clump of dust stay up with everything as it's trying to form something? You know what I'm saying?
Keeping up with unity.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're talking 500,000 miles in an hour.
Yeah.
Now, you imagine a whole year, how far that's gone, and you're trying to get a little clump of dust to follow that and get into an orbit.
Yeah.
You know, so everything just, the more you dig into science, the more unfathomable, I guess you could call it, it seems. It just,
in a way, in my mind, it seems ridiculous.
Yes.
When you start thinking, oh, this, okay, so this came from nothing.
Yes.
Nothing was somehow exploded.
Yeah. And you got to consider the mass that is out in the solar system. Our sun is a tiny star compared to some of the other ones. And just think of the amount of mass that's in all the stars. And they're trying to say it came from nothing. Mm-hmm. And so it gets... I guess my encouragement is just dig into it because it's fun. For me, it's really fun. Mm-hmm. But you take even the atom. So supposedly, according to evolution, I dug into that. So how did the atoms form? Well, when the Big Bang, there was all these little particles and electrons and different. And then over the course of 100,000 years, I think it was 300,000. They always have it's always weird to me how these numbers are so round. It's never like 279,000 years, Mm-hmm. But anyway. Yeah. All these particles were floating around in space, and then the electrons started finding the protons in the nucleus, and they started to form atoms. And I'm like, wow, come on. It's impossible. So the fascinating thing about an atom is that it's mostly air, which is also us. The only reason we have mass, and I can't get into it, it's super complicated, but quantum mechanics gives you the mass and weight. But it's mostly space. And I'll tell you how much space. If you took an atom and you took the nucleus and you made it the size of a peanut and you went out to Lambeau Field and you set it on the 50-yard line, the electron would be 2,000 times smaller than the peanut, and it would be outside the rim of the stadium.
Wow.
That's the space. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That gives you and now on top of that, all the electrons and electrons are in what they call shells. So as the elements get bigger and heavier, there's different shells. There can only I won't get into that. But anyway, there's multi shells that have an electron field, and those electron fields also orbit in the properties of angular momentum. So every atom has these tiny, tiny little electrons circulating the nucleus at exactly the right speed based on the distance from it. You following me? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has to be exact. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, they never disappear. An atom is forever. Mm. They might change into another element, and elements are where they take different atoms and they link the electrons up, and then that becomes a different, anyway. But my point is how fascinating, even digging into an atom and seeing God's work. I mean, how would random natural selection figure out how to make an atom? I mean, it's just so complex. And then if you look at the elements table, the periodic table, each element adds one more electron. Each one, as you go down the chart. It's not like, well, this one has 3, now this one has 7, this is, no, 1, 2, 3, it goes, there's a structure to it. It's not a random thing. And I always dislike that word random chance, random mutation. There's systematic organization to everything. It's not a random thing. So, but
and even if we give it the benefit of the doubt, I think we discussed this before. So let's say that we're just animals, and part of chance, and we're out of space dust. What does art and feelings benefit us as species?
Correct.
Something like, why do we feel the need to make music? Why do we feel the need to make art, to get connections?
Correct.
In a technical standpoint, that doesn't help us to preserve the species. Is something that is far beyond. Why does a person need to find purpose and meaning in what we do?
Correct. Yeah, emotions in general. That's not a result of natural selection. There's no, like you say, there's no need or use for it for survival. And I think of even like the sense of humor.
Yeah.
Why would we need a sense of humor? So I actually dug into that even with ChatGPT. Why would humor form in a human species? Well, it had to do with needing relationships. I go, no, wait a minute. You're telling me all this happened without any intelligence. How would it know that it needed something if there's no intelligence? And you can look at a lot of different things. I mean, I even like taste and the enjoyment of food. You can go in any culture, and the best times are had by people around food. Sitting and that's cross culture. That wasn't taught. That's just a natural thing that happens in every continent, every country. And then why does food taste so good? Why were we given taste buds? Why isn't there just some substance in the field, some protein paste that we have to take every day in order to live? No, there's wonderful things.
Yeah, this pleasure, this enjoyment.
Yes.
There's, like you said, it's a way to share with other people.
Yes.
It's relational.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's just like any other thing. If we you take it and abuse it or misuse it and take it in a way that God didn't intend to, it's harmful to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
But again, it's one of those things that once you realize that it was a gift from God, that He gave us this wonderful variety of flavors and food, I think you enjoy it more. Yeah. There's satisfaction and gratitude involved with it instead of like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
But so you take it's just amazing at how, I don't know, when you see God's presence in what you're doing, the enjoyment of life jumps, manyfold.
Yeah.
But what else we got on the? I don't know. They're all memory.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Which is neurons. Now, I just discovered recently that the size of a neuron is billions of times smaller than what you can actually read in an MRI or taking one of those scans. So they can't even see it. But they exist in our mind, and it's basically like a binary code. They're neurons. They're either on or they're off. And that's how it stores information. Well, like I said before, I'm almost 70. I can remember when I had my tonsils out. I was 3.5 years old. I can still remember the nurse carrying me down the hall. That information is somewhere in my head in some neurons that are switched on and off that for me to go, well, that's a random chance that would be there. No, it's too much.
And just the way the brain works, the neuroplasticity and the way it rearranges and changes and adapts. Some people say, oh, that's part of evolution. But, I was actually yesterday, I was watching this YouTube video about this baby who was born without a brain.
Mm-hmm.
So he had most of the mass in his head was liquid. So once they got the baby out and they drained the liquid out, it had probably 10% of what the brain would be. So think of it as a hollowed out brain by liquid. Mm-hmm. So they drain the liquid and they say there's no way that this baby is going to live to be, 8 months old. So nowadays this baby is 8 years old and he can eat, he can talk, he can see, he can interact with people. He's got some limitations, of course, but mostly it's like a regular child. Same with this other individual who was going to the university. He said he had his IQ was 140 something. So one day he said something like he had something like a headache. So he went and got checked. So they suggested an MRI just to make sure that nothing was wrong with his brain. And they found out that he only had like 23 to 25% of his brain. Same condition. He had the rest of it was full of liquid. And the guy was completely normal.
Wow.
Like he did not know until he got checked. And they started thinking, well, how does the brain work then? What part of the body does the brain send signals to make up for the lack of mass?
Sure.
And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, God is just showing us that we don't know nothing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like in Job, like I appear to you. What do you know of this? What do you know? Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth?
Correct.
Things like that. It makes us. I think he glorifies himself in those situations, so we can be humble.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So it's just fascinating to see his so-called fingerprint on everything about us. I know vision, sight is one of my things I enjoy most delving into. It is so incredibly complicated that the likelihood of anything random to do with sight is out of the question. There's like 5 aspects of sight. And the thing you need to remember is that sight actually isn't optical. It's optical when it goes through our lens of our cornea, but when it hits the retina, there's rods and cones on the back of your retina. There's 100 million of them in each eyeball, which again, as evolution would say, as that evolved, did it go, well, 20 million didn't work. Let's add 20 more million. Nope, 40 million didn't work. Without any intelligence, I don't understand how evolution would come to the end result of something that's so complicated. But anyway, so sight is, there's cones and rods, and I won't get into too much other than they're basically picking up almost like pixels, but they're photons. Each one picks up a couple. It takes that information and it runs it into another processing thing that's in the back of the eye. It processes through that, and then it sends it into the optic nerve as a neuron signal. That gets sent to the visual cortex in the brain. That part of the brain then deciphers those signals into a visual. And it does this instantaneously. Not only does it do that instantaneously, our lens of the eye focuses on everything without us having to, not like a camera where you got to turn the lens and get it in focus. Everything's instant. So that fascinated me when I've started discovering some of the complexities of eyesight. I got a piece of metal in my eye about a year ago, and I had to go and have it removed. And she actually had to use a machine and to get super close, and they drilled it out with a little drill.
Oof, sounds painful.
Yeah, it wasn't though, but it was kind of gross. You could hear it and feel it. A little drill.
Yeah.
So I got done, and she seemed like a really bright gal. And I said, hey, I have a question that's been kind of burning for many years since I was in school. She goes, what is it? I said, we're taught that the eyes turn everything upside down when it goes through the lens, and it's upside down. She goes, yeah. I go, it's not really upside down, is it? It's flipped. She goes, it is. It's flipped. Right and left and up and down. It's not just up and down. So then I go, how does that possibly work when my right eye is actually, the left part of it sees what's on the right side of that, and the left eye, everything's crisscrossed. And she got so excited, she got out of her chair and went and got a piece of paper. She goes, it's a phenomenon. You got to see how this works. And she started drawing me these lines and stuff from each eyeball, how it sees things, how it intermingles the crisscross of the left and the right eye, sends all of that through the optic nerves into the optical cortex of the brain, and then that puts that all together. She was so excited. She goes, no one's ever asked me that before. It's the most amazing thing. And she goes, the thing you need to remember, it does it seamlessly. You have two sources of visual information that are flip-flopping everything back, upside down and back and forth, and it's putting it back together, and there's no line. It's a seamless, instantaneous result. She goes, it's one of the most amazing things. And then I looked at her and I says, and some people think that just happened. And she paused, and I wasn't sure where her background was, but she kind of paused and But isn't that amazing what's actually happening? And I think that's what excites me, is when you finally start discovering what's actually going on with God's creations, it just makes you appreciate life even more. And to even add to that with vision, so the human eye picks up a certain spectrum band of light waves, and it's a color width, and there's all sorts of ultraviolet and so stuff that we don't see, but the human sees a bandwidth of colors that are the most vivid and vibrant. And that's why I believe that God made blue skies and rainbows and flowers and Grand Canyons and sunsets, that we can enjoy that. Other animals don't get to see what we get to see. Now, why were we gifted with that bandwidth?
That's exactly what I heard about the flowers. It said that the flowers bloom in a certain light spectrum that only can be visible to humans. It's just a little gift there.
We enjoy the colors of this world more than any other animal, or we get to visually see those colors more than any other animal. So I just think it's another aspect that God gave us to enjoy the things that he put around us, And again, it goes back to what I was saying. Once you realize that, I appreciate God when I see the sun rise. I don't go, oh, wow, we got a cool sunrise this morning. No, I go, thank you. And not only that, but he gives us a different one every day. It's not the same thing,
No.
Well, thank you again. This was even better than yesterday's.
It reminds me of the pictures that you take from your apartment. You take like the sunset. And then you said, God's masterpiece today.
Yes.
And then, like you said, now every time that I look at the sunset, I'm like, oh, there we go. There's another masterpiece. Hey, there's another masterpiece.
Thank you.
Every single day.
Thank you, God. Yes.
100%.
So, but I got one more topic or an area that I think people, when you're really trying to see God's handiwork on this planet, is photosynthesis. And I think I might have dug into that a little bit in that class, but it's probably one of the most fascinating mechanisms, period. When you consider that photosynthesis basically is taking light and it's turning it into food. And I'm supposed to believe that just randomly kind of happened. And, but I mean, it turns into starches and sugars and fats out of sunlight. And for that, again, to evolve, you can't wait. It's either working or it isn't. And life on Earth is not present without photosynthesis, because it also supplies our oxygen. But the mechanism involved in turning light into food is unstinking believable. And to look at that, and for any person or scientist to say, yeah, that just happened, you're insulting my intelligence. That's just a bad answer.
Talking about fairy tales.
Yes. So I encourage people, if you really want to maybe understand or appreciate your God even more, dig into some of the workings behind the scenes of our bodies and our planet, and all that stuff, because it is absolutely fascinating.
I heard a quote that said, like, sipping from the science cup the first sip will make you an atheist, but when you get to the bottom of the cup, you got to be appreciating your creator and in reverence and admiration. Yeah. Just when you said plant food, especially when they talked about rain as well, like is the food for the plants. And when they describe how lightning is so hot that it turns that it makes nitrogen. It makes nitrogen, and that's what rains and feeds the plants.
Without lightning, plants would not survive.
And that's what we smell when we say, "Oh, can you smell the rain?" That's the nitrogen falling from the sky. That was amazing. That blew my mind. And then just saying how there's millions of lightning going on every single day around the earth. Yeah.
Have you ever seen any of these videos from out in space where they show these rain clouds and it's just
lightning
all over the place? But that's adding nitrogen into the rain that helps the plant life. So but a lot of cool things that God has going on.
100%. Especially, it's the plant that you said, like either when a plant develops a mechanism right away or that plant is gone.
Yes.
That's also what made me think about that. Like, okay, then how does evolution explain this kind of thing?
Correct. Yes, it's either systems are in place or there is no life. Life cannot wait for evolution. And they talk about these small increments over millions of years. No. It doesn't work that way, you either have the systems in place to operate, and especially if you look at reproduction. Well, I think we spent a day on that. Reproduction can't wait until all the parts are there and working. And when you consider that even in its complete state right now, it's still difficult to conceive. Now, start working backwards off of that. Where's life? I mean,
take even one tiny aspect of it away.
Yes.
And it just collapses.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a lot of systems like that. You can't start degrading them, taking away from it, working your backwards, let's say, in evolution. And it's just, life is done. It's either, even like photosynthesis, it's either working or it isn't. You don't have incremental parts of photosynthesis. There's a lot of parts to it, and it's not going to survive, especially if you're talking millions of years. That's
another thing that I found very ridiculous is a friend was talking to me. We met in the restaurant industry, but he was mentioning how he saw this documentary where they explain if you take, let's say, one apple and you put it in a box and you seal it away and nothing comes in, nothing comes out. Eventually, the apple is going to decay and the process is going to go the way we expect. It's going to decay, probably turn into dust. But then if you give it enough time with all the energy that not even energy can come out of that box. If you give it enough time, millions and billions and billions of years, it will go back to be an apple. And I'm thinking, what?
No.
And I think that's part of the illusion, the millions and billions and billions of years.
Yeah.
It then makes you think, okay, well, that could have happened, I guess.
It's talk. It's just talk. And then, those in the classroom, you have to nod your head up and down. And when the test is on Friday, make sure you write the same thing down that the teacher taught you. And, and we can, I could talk for weeks on DNA, and that's a code. There's a code there. You show me another code in existence that was done by something other than something intelligent. It is so complex. We're talking billions and billions of pieces of information in DNA, and it has to be in the right sequence or it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that's random or how Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like critical thinking.
Yes.
They say that the people like us that believe in God, they say that we got to check our brain out the door to believe it in God. But that is absolutely not the case. And I always say, if you don't ask questions, how do you get to the truth?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Always ask questions. Question everything. Even question your pastor.
100%.
You can't just go through life nodding your head up and down. I think that's one of the problems with today's society. Everyone takes things, face value or whatever, and nod their heads. Okay, whatever, So anyway.
Yeah. And that, like I said, that's the best way to get to the truth. And the truth does not mind being questioned. It is the lies that get offended.
Absolutely. You bet. Exactly.
Yeah. So let's say Tom, what would you say to the person who is on the fence? Maybe somebody who's coming, maybe someone who is even atheist, or somebody who's agnostic, or somebody who says, well, how do I prove God? Like, what's the evidence? Like, where do I even look? Where do I begin? Like, based on your experience, what would you say to those people?
Well, my first thing usually is reproduction. I go, there had to be something intelligent to form that, because evolution would say it happened in increments. But the problem with that is you've got a male and a female species with totally different physiological makeups in their bodies. Totally different. That they're trying to tell me that both of those evolved in parallel at the same time, and then it happened. No. For one of them to get it right would be astounding. Now you've got two different physiological beings, and this is throughout the animal kingdom. It can't happen.
Just the fact that you need two, like you said, two of them to evolve at the same time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there will be no species of anything.
Yeah. And again, you cannot wait for that. Yeah. Well, how does generation 1 get to generation 2 if it has no reproduction system in place?
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy. It's crazy that they teach this, and then you're supposed to, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Assumption.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or even a little bit of fantasy there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
What about, the way that you got here, and the way that, I know your mind works like that. So to those who have that curiosity and hunger for knowledge, what would you tell them? Like somebody who is like, okay, well, I want to know this, but I don't know if I want to make anybody upset, or if people are going to be like, oh, I can't ask that kind of question. What would you say to that kind of person?
Well, and that's kind of where I got involved with ChatGPT, because I wanted to hone my debate skills, so to speak, without offending someone. And I can do it in the privacy of my own living room, and I can get good at it. And I don't care if ChatGPT didn't like what I said. I'm not offending a human. And then by doing that, you get better at it, and you get a little more maybe diplomatic on how you present it. And I think that's important. I never approach someone in the frame of mind like, you're an idiot, and let me show you why. And I always do it by asking questions. I never state my beliefs or this is how I think it happened. I always say, well, how do you think that got to that point? And let them start the discussion. You do have to be kind to one another. And I think that's part of our church life too, is just loving one another. And I think that's something that's really been strong for me. From 922 Ministries, is just loving one another. And I think just approaching people in that manner can get you a lot further. We live in a world of confrontation now, that someone says something and you got to butt heads with them and get them back, Yeah. And I think just sitting down, and I have also found versus being on social media or the internet, that sitting down face to face with someone is always completely different than debating them online, because you can hide behind the keyboard, so to speak. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think we're losing some of that human interaction that keeps us more civil, I guess. But that's just thought I have.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. Engaging in debate where it's respectful,
yes,
and where you don't need to offend the other person to get your point across. I think
exactly.
Healthy debate is essential to all of us Christians.
Yep.
In having an open mind and also not judging others that think different than us just because of that.
Correct.
So, So what any Bible verses that you can think of that support kind of like a way to looking at the world, or something that makes you think is like, oh, something to God's glory about his creation.
I think it's all over the Bible. And when you open your eyes to that, I can go just right to Genesis. In the beginning, God made the heavens and the earth. Well, we don't understand why and how and what's all involved with why he even created us in the first place. And I always go back. There's many places in the Bible where it's beyond our understanding. And I think that's where people, especially in the secular world, get in trouble because they try to, if you can't explain it, then it can't be. You know what I mean? And I look at it like there's a lot of things that are beyond my understanding. And that puts me in actually a more comfortable area because I know that God is a lot smarter than I am. And for me to think that I should understand why he did things is just, for me, dumb. Because why would I expect me to understand what God's capable of doing when I look at all of these things that he's created, So, but he's put everything, including the things in the Bible, in place for us to make the most of our life. And it's fascinating. It's really interesting as I've gotten older, and we hit on that a little bit in the beginning. I'm enjoying life more now than I ever have. And I think a lot of that is attributed to the fact that I see him in everything that goes on around me. And I never had that so much in the past.
Yeah.
So I think that really has struck a chord with me that, wow, not only is he present everywhere, but he did those things for me. And I think Pastor Mike hits on that once in a while when he calls them this moments. There's a lot of this moments. And when we can see that, it makes us even more encouraged and anticipating what life's going to be in heaven. Because if we think this is cool, just wait. And I often say, if we could get a 1 second glimpse into heaven, it would change everything we did for the rest of our life.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's amazing. So what when we talk about that earlier, like in the maturity of our faith and a spiritual life, what would you say to us younger people that live in a world that is riddled with anxieties and problems, and I need to get this right now? Like, what would you say to people like us?
Well, first of all, God tells us we're going to go through that. And he also tells us that we are not going to go through life without issues. But going to him in prayer and reading the Bible will get you closer to him and does give you a comfort level. The other thing I have discovered in the course of my years on this earth is that life is not a straight line. There's ups and downs for everybody, everywhere, of any, even wealthy. I mean, I did a lot of work for wealthy people. Believe me, they still have problems. And if anything, I also noticed that their problems are bigger. So God doesn't promise us a life without anxiety and different issues that come our way. And everybody goes through it. And I do believe that the quality of your life isn't the lack of confrontation or issues. It's how you handle them with God's help that determines the quality of your life. And I think knowing that and expecting it when problems do arise, it's a lot easier to deal with than to expect life to be a bowl of cherries and then something happens. Oh my, now what? Now what? No, I knew that this was going to come right around the corner. We're going to get through it. And I don't know how many hills and valleys have gone through my lifetime, but every valley had a hill right after it. And so, and I think he tests us on that. It's almost like a quiz. Okay, you say you believe in me and stuff. Okay, here. Well, Job, I think of that a lot, especially if I go through something kind of terrible. Well, it's not going to be as bad as what he went through, and he got through it, So I think my biggest advice would be expect troubles in life, and it'll be a lot easier to handle them when they surface because you were expecting them. I know a lot of people who expect life to be great, and then when something happens, it's it's just awful. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that would be my words of wisdom. Expect it.
Yeah.
So.
And okay, then I'm going to ask you something personal, something for me. When I was working on my job that I recently lost about a month ago, I felt like I was like really on fire for the Spirit, but then God took it away. That took it away, and then I would be like super anxious about it and applying on like 100 different jobs. But then this time I took it a little. I was more in peace about that because I said, God, you got it. But then at the same time, I felt like my spiritual life was kind of going down a little bit. And then when I say a little bit, I was thinking, well, I don't feel on fire right now. I don't feel the presence of God, but I know He's there, but I just don't feel on fire like I was feeling. Like, what would you say to anybody who went through that?
That's normal. It's normal. We go through ups and downs in life and ups and downs in our faith. And that's why it's important to stay in the Word. I have realized that even suffering and going through a downtime makes the good times that are coming around the corner even more satisfying. And I also have found that there was a reason for the, let's say, bad things that happened to me, because what happened 2 or 3 years later ended up being really, really good that would not have happened had that other episode, you know what I'm saying? So again, we always tend to want to have our life go according to our plans. God does have a plan. We don't see it. Again, it's beyond our understanding why He even puts events in our life. We probably, most of the time, don't see the reason behind it. And I think that's where faith enters in and just, okay, I don't know where you're taking me right now. I don't know how it's going to end, but I know that you have something in mind, so I'm gonna hang in there with you. So yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I think that's a perfect way to start landing the plane here.
Awesome.
Yeah. Any final thoughts that you have? Anything that you want to share? Anything about for people to see the beauty in God's creation?
Yeah. I think that's probably foremost. Just open your eyes, see God, understand what He did and why He did it for us, is to enjoy life. Give us a glimpse of what He has in store, which I can absolutely not imagine. The other thing is, I know when you're younger, for some reason, you don't think you're going to get old. And I don't know what that is, but it happens. I remember when I was young. I can still remember it, the feeling. Oh, yeah, 60. Look at that old guy over there. He's 60. Well, anyway, what I have discovered with time, lifetime, is that I think it's the perfect. I think it's the perfect length. I've enjoyed youth and maybe a little more ability to do physical things. I've done a lot of that. I went through the family time, that whole period of my own kids and then the grandkids. And now I'm getting into later life. I don't have to necessarily work as hard anymore. I am enjoying my time retired with Pam. I still do many, many things, so I'm definitely not sitting in a rocking chair. But my point being that we have these phases that life does take us through. And at this point in my life, I'm content with where I'm at. And if it were to end tomorrow, or a doctor say, hey, you got 3 weeks, perfect. I did the things I wanted to do, which I would also maybe remind people to don't sit on your butt, because time is fleeting, and use the skills and gifts that He did give you to the best of your ability. I don't have a whole lot of regrets. That's not to say I didn't go through issues, but I tried to do my best and use the skills that He gave me. And I got one more thing I just want to remind people to do is to appreciate people in your life that helped you. I had a 6th and 7th grade teacher in grade school, Mr. Shine. He was probably the most instrumental person in my life to get my creativity to the surface. And he did it in so many different ways. And I won't get into those other than he was very effective at it, because I remember vividly many, many, many opportunities that we had together doing different projects. I don't remember any of those times in high school, which was after that. So that shows you the impact. But anyway, what I did was about 5 years ago, I go, I wonder if Mr. Shine is still alive. So I got on Google. I found, he's in Appleton. And then I got on one of those services where you can find more information. So I got his phone number and address, and I called him up.
Yeah.
I go, Mr. Shine, I go, this is Tom Plaman. I go, I don't know if you remember. Oh, my gosh, Tom, I do remember you.
Wow.
That was in the 60s that I had him.
Wow.
So he said, what can I do for you? I said, well, I'd like to take you out to lunch. What? I go, yeah, I'd like to take you out to lunch. So he lived back off of Prospect by Perkins.
Okay.
And I said, you tell me where you want to meet, and we'll meet. And he goes, let's meet at Perkins on Thursday. I go, perfect. So I get over there and I recognize him. There he is. He's in his mid to late 80s at that point.
Okay. Yeah.
So we sit down and he goes, what possessed you to invite me out to lunch? I said, well, I just want to let you know how much of an impact you had on me.
Wow.
What? I go, yeah. Mm-hmm. He's got a little tears.
Yes.
And
makes me cry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he goes, oh, you can't, man, it just makes me feel so great. I said, well, I know a lot of times that teachers maybe, am I making a difference? Kids don't say, it's kind of like when you're a kid with your parent. You don't appreciate what they did for you until when you get older. Anyway, so I told him, and he's just like, oh my, that made my day. That made my day. So we had a great time. We hugged each other. We laughed. But the next year he passed
away. Yeah, I'm sorry.
But my point is, maybe acknowledge things like that.
Let the people in your life know that you appreciate them. Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Tom.
You bet.
I think that's a perfect way to end it.
Cool.
Once again, thank you for coming. Thank you for having this amazing conversation. Yeah. I know we touched so many different topics.
Yeah. Well, if you're interested in more, anyone, and I think I'm going to have another one of these creation breakouts at the core in the fall.
Awesome.
And I got new material too, so
I'll be there.
So yeah,
absolutely.
Excellent.
And I would invite you to, if you ever want to come back.
Sure.
Absolutely. Let's do it again.
Oh yeah, we got all sorts of things we can talk about. So
absolutely.
Cool.
So now let's end the podcast with a fun fact with the bread slice. Today the fun fact is brought to you by Tom. Tom, take it away.
Fun fact. Well, let's get into God's creations. And this is another example that shows you how amazing he is. I can't remember the name of the turtle. There's a turtle that's born off the coast, the east coast of Florida. And some scientists took two of these turtles. They had just hatched. They hadn't even crawled down the sand into the water yet. They took them right out of the area where they hatched. And they flew one up to Newfoundland and another one over to Europe, and I can't remember the coast, so it might have been Portugal. And they took both of these turtles at the same time, and they placed them in the water. And they were recording this, but when they placed the turtles in the water, both turtles rotated towards Florida and started swimming back because they migrate back to their nesting area.
Wow. They just knew.
They just knew. Nobody taught them. Their moms didn't teach them. They weren't in the water and found the area where they were. They were still in their nesting area, and yet when they flew them thousands of miles away, they knew where they had to go.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my fun fact.
That's amazing.
There's God.
Yeah, absolutely. So once again, Tom, thank you for being here today. And to anyone out there, no matter what you're going through, no matter how broken you think you are, no matter what your life situation is, ask the Lord Jesus Christ to come into your life. And even if you don't know how to do it, let him know with all sincerity in your heart, Lord, show up. Let me know. let me know that you are there, and I promise you he's going to. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.